Okay, so I want to start today with something I think pretty much all of us just kind of take for granted.
Mm.
You go to your doctor or, you read some health article online, and the general idea about masturbation is, well, it's always the same.
It's normal. It's healthy.
Exactly, it's natural, and as long as you're not hurting anyone, it's fine. In fact, it's almost weird if you don't do it.
Yeah, that's definitely the dominant narrative. It's almost treated like, you know, basic human maintenance, like brushing your teeth.
Right.
Mm.
But the source we're looking at today, it basically takes that whole idea, crumples it up, and just tosses it.
It's a big shift in perspective.
Huge. We are doing a deep dive into a transcript from Dr. Imran Khan. He's a sexologist. He's got something like 15 years of clinical experience with men's health. And his take is that this normal habit is, well, he calls it a ticking time bomb.
And that's such a stark contrast to what we usually hear,
Yeah.
right? Dr. Khan, he doesn't sugarcoat it at all. He even says, right up front that the mainstream medical world just says, keep doing it, it's fine.
Just don't do it excessively.
Exactly. Excessively.
That's the word that always gets me. Excessively. It feels like such a cop-out. It's like, okay, don't eat too much sugar. What does that mean? Is it 1 cookie? Is it 10?
And that is precisely where Dr. Khan plants his flag. He argues that this whole safety net of moderation is actually a trap.
A trap. How so?
Well, his core argument is that the line between normal and excessive it's invisible. There's no signpost. There's no warning light. And by the time you realize you've crossed it, you could already be dealing with some pretty severe consequences.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate for a second. I mean, something like 95% of people do this. If it was that dangerous, wouldn't we see a bigger problem? Is he maybe being a little alarmist here?
That's a fair question. But his argument isn't that you're going to drop dead. It's more that you're going to slowly kind of erode your quality of life without even knowing why.
I see.
Because that line, excessive, is so undefined, people just drift into what he calls addiction, all while thinking they're still in that healthy zone.
Okay, so let's unpack that. If I go to my doctor about cholesterol, they give me a number. You're at 200, maybe lay off the bacon. Does Dr. Khan give a number? Is it once a day? Once a week?
And that's the scary part. He says there isn't one. There's no blood test for this. There's no
Yes.
MRI that's going to light up and say, warning, addiction detected.
So you're flying blind.
Completely.
Yeah.
Which makes it so easy to rationalize, right? Oh, I'm just stressed today, or, I'm just bored.
Yeah.
And to explain how this slide happens, he uses this analogy that I think it really hits home. He talks about alcohol.
The drinker analogy. Right?
Yeah. Think about it. Nobody cracks open their first beer thinking, you know what? My goal is to destroy my liver.
Of course not.
It starts socially, right?
Yeah.
Once a month, maybe. Then it's every Friday night to unwind.
And before you know it, it's a glass of wine with dinner every single night.
Precisely. And Dr. Khan says this follows that exact same slippery slope. It might start weekly, but the brain, it's a pleasure-seeking missile. It gets that dopamine hit.
Which is a huge chemical reward.
Huge. And the brain just goes, okay, I want more of that. So that weekly habit, it becomes daily. And then daily becomes multiple times a day. And all the while, the person thinks, I'm just relieving stress. But really, they've crossed into compulsion.
But what drives it? I mean, surely there's a reason people start down that path. He talks about the fuel for this.
He does. He breaks a why into two parts. First, there's just biology. We all have natural sexual desire. But then there's a social gap. People are getting married later or they're single for longer, so there's no official outlet.
So they turn to the DIY method.
Right. But then you add the gasoline. And he specifically calls out social media, websites, and especially high-speed internet porn as fuel to the fire.
So it's an accelerant.
Totally. It takes this natural, maybe flickering urge and turns it into a forest fire that demands to be put out right now.
It turns a want into a need.
Exactly. And he says in his 15 years, patients almost never realize when they've crossed that line from casual to addict. It's an invisible addiction.
You mentioned lives falling apart earlier, and the source gets really specific here. I want to talk about one stat, or it was more of a case study that honestly just made my jaw drop.
You talk about the extreme cases.
The 20 times a day thing. I mean, I read that and had to stop. Logistically, how is that even possible? And biologically, how?
Sounds impossible, doesn't it? But he uses this to show how severe the compulsion gets. He explains that at that stage, it has absolutely nothing to do with pleasure anymore.
Well, so what is it then?
It's a nervous fatigue. He literally describes patients who are trying to do it 20 times a day without even an erection. They're just shaking a flaccid organ. There's
Oh,
no discharge, nothing. They're just going through the motions because their brain is just screaming for that dopamine hit, even though the body is completely tapped out.
that is a genuinely horrifying image. It just strips away any idea of this being fun or healthy. It's just obsession.
It is.
Yeah.
And if you're putting your body through that, I mean, even if it's not 20 times, maybe it's 3 or 4 times a day, but aggressively, physics takes over. You can't have that much friction without consequences.
Okay, let's talk about that physical toll, because I think guys especially think they're, invincible down there. But Dr. Khan gets very graphic.
He does not mince words. He starts with the basics,
Friction.
doing it with dry hands, no lubrication, just rushing. That causes immediate skin irritation, calluses, things like that. But the deeper issue is what he calls micro-injuries.
Micro-injuries, that sounds medical.
It is. Think about it. The organ is basically a sponge filled with these tiny, delicate blood vessels. And Dr. Khan explains that aggressive handling, that people call the death grip, it can actually rupture those little vessels
So you're basically bruising yourself from the inside out.
constantly.
Yeah.
And he says this can lead to swelling, fluid buildup, and in really bad cases, serious infections. He's treated infections caused just by the mechanical trauma from a patient's own hand.
But there's this paradox he talks about that I found really confusing. He says it makes you hypersensitive, but then he also says it can make you numb. How can it be both?
It seems contradictory, right? But it's really a timeline of damage. Let's call it the sensitivity paradox.
Okay, walk me through it.
So, in the beginning, all that friction and irritation makes the nerve endings raw and exposed. That leads to hypersensitivity.
And the result of that is?
Premature release.
Yeah.
The moment there's any real contact with a partner, the nerves are so overactive that it's just over in seconds.
Yeah.
The whole system is on a hair trigger.
Okay, so that's phase one. What about the numbness?
That happens over a longer time with that aggressive death grip style. If you're constantly squeezing way harder than a human partner ever could, the nerves eventually just they deaden themselves to cope. They build up a tolerance.
So normal touch just stops registering.
Exactly. Dr. Khan calls it the organ losing feeling. So when that person is with a partner, the sensation is too soft, it's too gentle, they can't feel enough to stay hard, or even if they do, they can't finish.
Wow. So you're trapped between finishing instantly or not finishing at all. Both sound like a nightmare for any relationship.
And both come from the same root cause. And on top of all that, he mentions a general fatigue.
Right, the fatigue factor.
Yeah, and it's not just about the physical act. It's the neurological cost, the mental energy spent thinking about it, fighting the urge, and then the chemical crash after the dopamine spike. It just creates this massive drain. He sees patients who are just exhausted all the time.
Which is actually a perfect transition into what Dr. Khan says is the real danger. And I found this fascinating because he explicitly says the mental side effects are way more dangerous and much harder to cure than the physical ones.
That's a crucial point. Skin heals, right?
Yeah.
But rewiring your brain,
Mm-hmm.
that is a much, much bigger challenge. And he primarily frames this mental impact as a form of obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD.
So he's actually diagnosing it as a mental health disorder, not just a bad habit.
Correct. He talks about brain craving, like junk food. If you eat tons of sugar, your brain stops wanting broccoli. It needs that big hit. He says the brain gets rewired to demand the dopamine from masturbation because it's so much higher than anything else.
And this is where that trigger expansion idea comes in, which I found, frankly, terrifying.
It is. It's the way the addiction progresses. So at first, maybe you need a specific type of porn video to get the urge, but as the brain gets more desperate for that fix, it just lowers the bar.
So the trigger stops being so specific and starts being what?
Anything. He says eventually, just seeing a person walking down the street fully clothed can trigger the urge. Your brain just starts hijacking everything you see.
That sounds absolutely exhausting, just trying to get through your day while constantly fighting your own brain.
It's relentless, and that leads to the compulsion. He described it as total loss of control, where the person doesn't even want to do it, but the brain just forces them.
And he gave some pretty stark examples of where this leads people.
Yeah, it's not just in the bedroom anymore. He mentions students doing it in school bathrooms between classes, employees sneaking off to the office restroom.
Let's just pause on that. The office restroom, I mean, think about the risk. Your job, your reputation, all of it, for a quick moment of relief.
And that's how you know it's a real addiction. The risk reward is completely broken. Logic is out the window. You're risking everything to scratch an itch that's just going to come back in an hour.
And then what? You walk back to your desk. What are you feeling in that moment?
Crushing guilt and shame. The rational brain kicks back in and says, what did you just do? You have no control.
Which leads to depression?
Depression, anxiety,
Mm.
and here's the cruelest part. The vicious cycle he talks about. When we feel bad, we seek comfort, right? And for this person, what's the one thing that gives them that quick hit of relief?
The habit itself.
Exactly. So the shame causes pain, and the pain drives them right back to the thing that caused the shame. It's a closed loop you can't escape.
This has to spill over into their actual relationships. He has a pretty dire warning about marriage.
He does. He calls it a marriage crisis.
Yeah.
And it's one of the heaviest parts of the material. He says when a person deep in this addiction gets married, they are, in his words, mentally and physically unfit for a partner.
Unfit. That's a strong word.
It is. He talks about the bedroom disconnect. We already covered the physical problems, but it's psychological too. If you've conditioned your brain to respond to pixels on a screen, a real human partner can feel disappointing.
Disappointing.
In a dopamine sense. A real partner isn't perfectly edited. Intimacy is slower. It's messier. If your brain is wired for the fast food of porn, a real home-cooked meal can feel boring.
And the partner on the other side of that just feels rejected.
Totally. They feel unattractive. They think, what's wrong with me? He says it leads to resentment and very often the complete collapse of the relationship.
It just paints this picture of total isolation. You're locked in the cycle while your actual life is happening outside the door.
That's the tragedy of it. It's a habit that thrives on isolation and just creates more of it.
So, to sum this all up, Dr. Kahn is presenting this view that is just radically different from what we're told. He sees something that starts as natural, but can spiral into a really destructive force.
That's his central thesis. It's a downward spiral. And his biggest frustration seems to be that people just wait too long to take it seriously.
Because of that excessive myth we started with.
Exactly. Because there's no alarm bell.
Yeah.
And that brings us to his closing philosophy, which I think it's really profound. He says a wise person stops a danger before it becomes visible.
Don't wait for the crash.
Don't wait for the crash. Don't wait until you get a physical injury.
Right.
Don't wait until you're depressed. Stop it while it still seems harmless. That, to him, is the only way you can be truly safe.
Okay, so I know there are people listening right now, maybe part of that 95%, who are thinking, you've just scared the hell out of me, but how do I stop? If my brain is rewired, what do I do?
And that is the cliffhanger Dr. Kahn leaves us on.
Yeah.
Today's deep dive was purely about the diagnosis, understanding the problem. He ends by promising a future video on how to actually break the addiction.
So we get the diagnosis, but we have to wait for the prescription.
Which is frustrating, I get it.
Yeah.
But I think just understanding the why you feel the way you do, that's a huge first step. You can't fight an enemy you can't see. And today, Dr. Kahn basically turned on the lights.
It definitely forces you to reevaluate what safe even means. Just because everyone does it doesn't mean it's benign.
Precisely. And if I can leave our listeners with just one final thought to chew on, if Dr. Kahn is right, and there is no clear medical line for excessive, no text message from your body saying, hey, stop.
Yeah.
Can a habit ever really be considered safe if it has the power to silently rewrite your personality?
That is a heavy question to end on, but definitely one worth thinking about. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.
Stay curious.